People will walk through the door and just go, wow, when they see it. Yeah. And I think the idea of this theatricality fits in with the way the whole estate was developed. The grounds are capability brown, the house, the ceilings are Adam. There is this theatricality about the whole thing. It's a statement of wealth and intention right the way through.
Aileen, we're here at Harewood House in a glorious room known as the State Room, and the main feature, you can't miss it, is the state bed. Could you give us some information about the significance of this bed, its history?
State beds, back at the time that this was made, were almost starting to go out of fashion. In the Elizabethan time, you would definitely have had one of these in a house this grand, because your hope was always that the monarch of the day, on her progress, would wish to come and stay in your establishment, and obviously needed an appropriate bed in which to sleep. By the time this was made, not so fashionable, but for some reason Edwin Lassell still decided that he wanted to have this huge state bed in his new house up here on the hill at Harewood.
And he commissioned the country's most well-known and gifted craftsman to make it.
We're not quite sure why he chose Chippendale. It might be because he was a local lad from just up the road. It might be because he worked closely with Robert Adam, who was also involved with the house. It might just be because Edwin had seen examples of Chippendale's work in other houses and thought, he's the man for me. Whatever reason, Chippendale got the commission, part of which was this state bed, which I think is the most expensive item that Chippendale ever made.
Wow.
I know. Just the actual bedstead itself, the frame was £250.
Wow.
It's got 3 mattresses, a bolster, it's got all the bits that go around the side, the tassels, the fringes.
Yes.
That was another £150, and Edwin actually provided the green damask himself, so you could add that on to the £400 that Chippendale charged just to create this.
And the tassels were in themselves quite expensive items.
Oh, absolutely. The tassels and the fringes, the 2 different shades, the gold and the green, they were so expensive just on their own. To put this bed into context, if you bear in mind this is £400, if you then look at Denton Hall in Ilkley, that was built, the whole thing was built and furnished with £500 to Chippendale for £11,000 at about the same time in the 1770s.
Right.
So to have spent £400 just on a bed, and to have given Chippendale a commission for £10,000.
Just for furnishings.
It was a huge commission, and maybe Chippendale decided, do you know what, even if this is a bit old-fashioned, if they're going to pay me that much money, they can have their state bed.
Absolutely. So we know it was made in his workshop, but we're not sure about his involvement, because if you look at what Chippendale is famous for, there is not really much reflected in this, is there?
I think it's a one-off piece in some ways. So this has moved from what was the Rococo style, which was very flamboyant with lots of swags and natural things going on. It's moved from that.
I'm getting that feeling from this.
From this.
Yes.
But oddly enough, this is slightly more simplistic than the previous style. So this is neoclassical. It's got these lovely fluted bedposts here. It's in some ways simpler. It's, if you think Greek and Roman architecture and art, you can see references right the way through this. But you're right, it's still, when you look at the top, it has all this going on.
Yes, it's very busy.
Yes, it's got the swags, it's got the vases, it's got the vase on the top of the dome.
The urn-like feature, and the dome creates a sense of a temple.
It does have that temple feel. It's almost as though it's a temple both to Edwin Lassell's wealth and to Chippendale's talent and ability to make an item like this.
So I suppose this item really sums up his ambitions, his vision for the future and his descendants.
I think so. Very much the statement piece. The whole room says statement, doesn't it really? So yes, I think that's where Edwin saw himself going.
Was it regularly used, or did anybody notable actually sleep in the bed?
It's been used twice. So,
Twice.
because only sort of reigning monarchs were expected to sleep in it, the two that we know that have slept in it, Grand Duke Nicholas, who became Tsar Nicholas I in Russia, and then Queen Victoria, but when she was Princess Victoria, she stayed here with her mother, the Duchess of Kent, and she slept here. But they are the only two people that we're aware have slept in it. We have had a child once come across the ropes and bounce on it, but I don't think that counts. And obviously, we can't stand here and look at this opulence without starting to consider, where did the money come from that allowed them to build this house and employ Chippendale to provide this sort of furnishing?
The Lascelles family had plantations in Trinidad, Jamaica and Barbados on plantations that produced sugar, which was a very intensive labour process. And so when we look at this exuberance and admire it, we may know of some of the craftsmen and the labourers here at Harewood that, contributed to making some of the furniture in the house, but we never hear about the other side. And that's the missing narrative. There's a whole drama attached to the enslavement of Africans in Jamaica and the contributions that have been made to the British economy, which I suppose this kind of gilded material just totally, it blindsides you. You're thrown off the scent. I think it helps all sides to understand the trauma and the legacies and the significance of the contributions of Africans, so that when we look at a list of names on an inventory, we don't just think, oh, well, they're just slaves. They were enslaved and they were human beings. By providing a platform for their humanity, we're opening a window to see each other as human beings today as well. And so do we know much about the enslaved themselves, the labour that they did, and how do you communicate that to visitors who may ask?
We know some of the details. We know the absolute awful conditions that people were living in and were treated. We have in some of the, actually I think they're called inventories, where people are listed almost along with cattle and other goods. And people, it's just their first name, but they are men, they are women, they are boys, they are girls, but they are just listed because they are owned by, in this case, the Lascelles family.
I found it quite entertaining looking at Chippendale's receipts, because it's so colourful. These items are so rich and nuanced and refined, And then you look at it alongside the itinerary for a plantation and the names of children and seniors. They called Grand Betty if they were a senior, and there are joiners. There are masons and builders and people with skills. Now, it's important to remember these people had skills before transatlantic slave trade, but to see them reduced in this way, I found that incredibly depressing. So I think a lot of people would like to see like a rehumanization, really, that we don't just think of human beings as slaves, because nobody is born a slave technically. That's something that's imposed on another person. But seeing the frivolous list of expensive items versus a list of enslaved people who were just pinned down and trapped in suffering atrocities, and there is no recourse to justice. It's the contrast is, but hopefully the more we talk, the more we can all heal. But what can we learn? I think that's the important thing. What can we learn about these people?
I have been here quite a long time, and initially I found it very difficult to talk through the whole history of this house because it's so sad. And I think sad is a word, we can't change it, but you look, as you say, at some of these lists, and what a waste of all these wonderful people, their lives completely destroyed, basically to make money.
Yes.
And it is such a sad story. We had an exhibition, there was a lady came round who lived in Chapeltown in Leeds. She had her friend over from St Kitts and Nevis, and they were asking me, did I not feel embarrassed working here?
Right.
And I thought about it, and I actually used the word sad. I think I said, I'm not so much embarrassed, but sometimes I feel very sad. And at the end of it, we were both in tears. We gave each other a big hug, and they left. But I think that sadness is something to reflect on, that the whole trade at that time was just so sad,
Yes.
and for money,
And
just for money.
It was tragic to the extreme, really. And do you think it's good to talk about it?
Oh, I think it's essential. I think without those conversations, we lose that story. And it's so important. It's not just the story of Harewood.
Yes.
It's the story of thousands and thousands of people, some of whom live in Leeds now, lots of whom live in England.
Yes.
It's their story as well.
Yes.
And I think it's important that we have this open history approach at Harewood now, so we can tell this story. And not just us telling the story to other people, but engaging with different communities about their involvement with the history of this house. I think that's quite an important thing to do as well.
So the Harewood estate has made a bold move in going forward, opening up and talking about this history. And it's not about the controversy, but it's about what we can learn. And so there are varying activities. There's an exhibition.
There is a stunning exhibition up in our church by somebody called Chris Day, which is absolutely fabulous. And we have exhibitions in the house as well. We've got some African art. We've got a story of a servant who came to work here from the Caribbean in the Edwardian time. But we're also looking to develop other initiatives that are not necessarily inside. So, for example, the talks that you yourself are doing at the moment around Harewood that cover the history, the elements that are not obvious when you first look at this, 18th century house. And we're also developing a series of outreach talks that we can take from Harewood out into communities. Instead of expecting communities to always come and visit us, we need to go out and we need to engage with people about the history of the house and listen to what they're saying, as well as us telling people what we think.
Yes, I've had great responses on the walk, and people are just fascinated to learn what they didn't know before. And because this has been such a taboo subject and hush-hush, we don't hear very much about it. So it's a few decades behind time in a sense, but let's make the most of it. Let's provide information. It's not about finger pointing. It's about how can we empower each other, share information, and learn more about each other than what we knew before.
So when we look at this state bed, this isn't just a bed as such. This is an absolute symbol of Edwin's wealth and the whole way in which Edwin positioned himself, using the money that he had got, and he had so much of it. So this isn't merely a bed. This is almost a symbol of the entire trade and the history of Edwin Lascelles.